When preparing for a webinar, how much effort and time should you put into preparing content over other aspects of the webinar? There is no set rule. There is no cookie cutter metric for this or framework. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you are in a coach, consultant, expert, any position in professional services, the thing to remember is why people attend webinars. Of course, they attend webinars for your content, your ideas, your expertise, your knowledge. That's what you're selling. That's what you're offering as a service, as a free service. If your webinar is free, your marketing is already there to serve the people that you want to help. But one of the things that we all have in the back of our mind when we attend webinar is this question: do I see myself working with this firm? Do I see myself working with this expert? And we make that decision based on something super intangible. It's almost like an energy. Do we feel like there is a fit? Do we feel like we can relate to the person that we have in front of us on camera or on our screen? So when preparing for a webinar, content is king for sure, but energy is queen. Energy is so important. And I see so many people forget about this, even podcast hosts. I mean, this applies to webinars, but this applies to presentations, to being a guest on a podcast or a host of a podcast. The energy is radically crucial. How much energy do you put in the conversation that you're going to have with people? And what I mean by energy is not necessarily being energetic, being like all positive and moving around. What I mean by energy is your signature energy. What intent do you bring in communicating your ideas, communicating your narrative? What intent is it? If you are about authenticity, which I hope you are, then how should you approach preparing your webinar? Besides the content, if you are doing an authentic webinar, you're going to have to think about the things that people wonder about. What are the truths that are untold that most people know? What are the elephants in the room? What are the things that are obvious to you that may not be obvious to people? What are the things that are undeniable? What are the facts, the data that can support your statements and your point of view, your perspective? And what are the stories that support your perspective? Remember, a narrative is a system of stories, and you're showing up on a webinar to give a view of your narrative. It's just a small, literally a small digital window, just like this camera. I'm recording this on Zoom, and I actually do webinars on Zoom monthly. I used to do them weekly. And I would always lean into the idea of authenticity and being a genuine presenter, genuine messenger of my narrative. So if you're doing a webinar, sure, you have to have content prepared, organized, good quality, verified, well presented if you're using visual slides, graphics, diagrams, sketches. But really, what makes the difference, again, is the energy. Energy is queen when you show up in front of people. So how do you set yourself up for the best energy possible? How do you set yourself up for really coming up with, shaping your signature energy? For sure, this requires also preparation. It's not just a day off. It's not just in the moment. It's about rehearsing. It's about preparing. It's about repetition. It's about creating as many possibilities as you can to be in that posture of sharing your ideas with others, making your presentation, taking people through your concept, your framework, your key ideas. It's about giving yourself as many occasions as you have to really tap into how you're going to feel at your best, really. So what do I do when I approach a webinar coming up? One of the things that I always remind myself and this was taught to me by many of my mentors, is that you probably know more than enough. You probably know 100 times what you can actually share in an hour. Let's assume your webinar is an hour or 30 minutes, doesn't matter. You probably know enough there. And really, the more you're going to put energy into preparing, the more you're going to lean into perfectionism, the more you are into this energy that is rigid, that is closed-ended, that is an energy of scarcity, because now we have less time and we want to make sure that we control everything, versus letting yourself relax and showing up a little more about with who you are, more authentically. I say this because I used to over prepare, and I still sometimes, fall into the trap of wanting to have a detailed outline and script everything. And I learned through my experience that it wasn't a good deal. It wasn't a good trade-off. It wasn't a good balance for what I wanted to accomplish, which was really connecting with people through digital media from a standpoint of authenticity. I want people to feel, to see what they would get everywhere they meet me, even the way I'm dressed. Like if you meet me outside of my office here, this is the way I dress, right? I don't wear special clothes. This is how I feel comfortable. This is the environment where I actually operate in. That's my natural place to be. There is no fake background. I don't blur it. I just make it, fairly welcoming, warm, and I don't make it distractive. So all of these aspects contribute to a sense, and that's what I mean by energy, a sense of connection with my audience. So if you're watching this video, you may realize that the energy that I share with you is my unique energy. It's my identity. That's why I call it my signature energy, is how I would show up normally in front of people. And I do this because I'm not here to promote an image that is not me. I'm not here to try to convince anyone or manipulate anyone. What you see is what you get. And I often get that comment when people get on a call after a webinar I did or a presentation somewhere, or they watched one of my videos on LinkedIn or YouTube or other channels, and they go, "Oh my gosh, you're the same." Like I get to talk to you. I get to talk to you in the same environment. I get to talk to you in the same place as I actually saw you the first time. So I want you to keep that in mind. People in your webinar will probably remember anywhere between 1 and 3 key takeaways, 1 and 3 things, maybe more leaning towards one big thing. And yet, you probably have 100 things to share, or 100 ideas, or 100 bullet points, and they are just going to take 1 out of the 100 that you have. But what matters most is how you make them feel. It's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. And you do this through your signature energy. So think about it. It's a really critical, really important part of building your strategic narrative. The strategic narrative is not just words on paper or slides or things that are written that are cold. It's how you breathe life through it. And I may touch here on a domain that I used to be really focused on, which is more like presentation delivery. Yeah, of course it has this. But I'm talking about what's happening also inside you, how confident you feel about your ideas. How do you own your ideas? How do you stand behind them? How do you demonstrate them? What kind of voice do you use to establish your point of view, your statements? How do you introduce yourself to people? Are you willing to talk a little bit about yourself, about your journey, sharing some of your origin story? One of the critical exercises I recommend doing to build a strategic narrative is your origin story. Like, how are you going to introduce yourself? Well, maybe it would be a good idea to tell us why you're here today, where you come from, so that we understand where are you taking us. So I hope this is helpful. Keep in mind preparing for a webinar, which is part of the system of stories and assets that you build to build your to build your strategic narrative, is very much an exercise in energy creation, not just pure content, rational, materialistic, just ideas. It's also what energy you bring to the table. I hope this helps. Thanks.